I'm here with Marilyn. Marilyn is the founder of the Bottom Line CPA. We actually just completed an acquisition at Stellar Brands of the Bottom Line, but we're not going to talk about that a ton in this podcast because we are literally jumping off of this one and then doing another podcast for the TBL podcast that's all about the acquisition. So I didn't want to focus as much there. But Marilyn, I've indirectly known you for 6 years, but I hadn't actually met you until, I don't know, like what was it, 9 months ago, something like that.
Yeah, right.
You were the woman behind the curtain at TBL. I had heard all these things about you. Everybody always said wonderful things about you. But I was just like, I don't even know who she is. So anyway, it's been great getting to know you over the last 8 months and especially in the last 6 months since we started the acquisition stuff. But you have a really fascinating story because you do a lot of different stuff, or you have done a lot of different things. And I want to dive into those, but you obviously founded the Bottom Line, but now you're like a restaurant magnate. I don't even know what to call you. You're in this restaurant investment group, great Mexican food, Soccer Taco. Just so, and where are the locations of Soccer Tacos?
They're all in Knoxville, Tennessee. There's 3, soon to be 4 of the Soccer Tacos.
And I am a Mexican food snob because I live in Texas, and I feel like Tex-Mex is like, we are very proud of our Tex-Mex, but I was very pleasantly surprised. It is very good Mexican food. So,
glad to hear it.
So that was awesome. I got to eat there and everything, but let's just talk about your story. How did you even get into entrepreneurship? What were you doing before TBL? And then how did you get into TBL? And was that even your first thing? I don't even know if that was the first thing that you did.
No, it wasn't the first thing I did. So to start back really into college, went into college, I was really good at math. And my dad was an engineer. My brother was an engineer. So I thought, I'll be an engineer. It took me a semester to realize I'm not an engineer.
My dad is an
I
engineer,
I practically failed out of my first semester, which is just not me. So I turned to accounting because, again, that's another math oriented. And I had actually dabbled in accounts, receivable in a high school job. And it really turned out that I'm an accountant. When I got out of school, when I got my bachelor's, I got a job, a couple of jobs, but it ended up, I went to a local CPA firm. Okay. So I did all kinds of audit and reviews and taxes all in this small, so it gave me a lot of experience. Then I moved to Utah with my husband and decided I didn't want to go back into a CPA firm environment. Too many hours. I didn't want to raise my child having that sort of time commitment. So I just started a little bookkeeping firm, local clients. I didn't need to make that much, just something to contribute while I stayed home with my first child. And then I just kind of progressed into having a client that was in the restaurant business. 80% of my work was with him, and he was a restaurateur himself. So I met a lot of restaurant people. That's where Jessica and I met, is with the same group. And so I learned restaurants. So when that sort of ended, because it all sold and some other things happened, some of our restaurant buddies actually had one of their wives was working at Soccer Taco, just one little restaurant in town, and they were wanting to sell it. So that's how I got into the restaurant business. Okay. And the beauty of this is I'm not a restaurateur. It's not a great idea to buy a restaurant because they have a high failure rate. But in our situation, I was the admin, the accountant, the bookkeeper, and my partners were the actual restaurateurs. So it helped on both sides, managing the money and the administration, and their job is the restaurant.
Why? So I want to dig into, I actually want to go back a little bit in a second, but I'm just curious. I know this about restaurants. I have friends that have started restaurants, and I've always just had this belief of like, that's not a business I would ever want to get into. My first job, I was a host at a Mexican food restaurant, funnily enough. And I hated it. I think is a good way to put it. Like it was even just doing a simple job, like being a host, it was like extremely stressful and everybody was really stressed. And so it just, to me, it seemed like a weird environment to try to run a business in, because the customers are never happy, or, even if they are happy, it's like they're more likely to be unhappy than not, in my imagination. But why is it that it's such a high failure rate for restaurants?
I think most of the time it's because people romanticize about the food,
Hmm.
especially, and serving the customers, but they have no concept about the money side of it. They
Okay.
really don't. It can get away from you very, very quickly. From
Why is that?
Because everything costs so much. The food costs themselves. The vendors can raise prices without really notifying you. You have
Yeah.
to keep on top of all of your relationships with your vendors, and know what your plate's costing you. So there's a lot of factors that are involved in that plate of food. And if
Right.
you're not making money, it's not going to take you long before you're not making anything, let alone
Right.
being able to pay for your vendors.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it really takes a good system to manage what you're doing.
One thing I've always wondered is how do restaurants balance keeping the food costs down or reasonable, but also keeping the food really good? Because it seems like it would be a really, like, a struggle, or one of the biggest struggles I would imagine, is like, how do we make sure our stuff tastes good, but it isn't insanely expensive, or that we have no margin on it?
I think two of the points I would say is you need to have somebody in the kitchen tasting the food every single day,
Okay.
because the people making the food don't necessarily taste the food. If they do taste the food, they aren't invested in the quality of the food. They're just doing their
Right.
job.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got to have somebody that's hopefully a partner or an owner, but if not, someone very high up that
Uh-huh.
relies on that to do some taste testing. And the second one is you need the data. If you do not have a good POS system, which is the point of sale,
Hmm.
that gives you all the data, not only in the sales but in the cost of what you're selling, it's going to get away from you.
Yeah. What would be, so you've got overhead, right? You've got the building, and then you've got the
Mm-hmm.
food costs, and then you've got the people. So what's the highest cost out of all of that?
The people, the food
Okay.
and the people are pretty similar in a restaurant,
Okay.
depending on what food you're selling. In the Mexican restaurant, the food costs are a little lower than, say, in a steak restaurant. But
Right.
for
Right.
us, it's food and people, and
Okay.
everything else is pretty minimal. So when you've got a staff of people, you've got to have someone that's letting people go when the head count's down, or making sure it's staffed properly for high
Right.
traffic times, and doing a lot of stuff to engage the community. So there's
Yeah.
grassroots marketing kind of things that really do matter in the community where you live.
Yeah. It sounds like, compared to an online business, because those are the only types of businesses that I've owned,
Hmm.
it sounds way harder.
It
um,
is.
but is there, I mean, you told me once, just probably an offhand comment, that you don't really make your money in restaurants until you have a few of them. And I was really,
Hmm.
is that true? One, did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay. Why is
Yes.
that? That seems, because it seems to me like that it would, is it just a scale thing where you just
It's
have
just
more
to scale
scale?
things. Your vendors will work with you the bigger you are. You'll get less cost
Uh,
per item if you
okay.
have volume. So
Okay.
if you're just a one restaurant person, nobody's going to be giving you any deals or discounts or lower
Okay.
costs.
That makes way more
Um,
sense. So then you get kind of
yeah.
economy to scale, because
Hmm.
you're able to get those food costs down. That
Hmm.
makes way more sense, because I was like, that it just sounds like three times harder if you have three
Yeah.
restaurants. Like, it just sounds
And
more
you can
difficult.
you can actually spread some of those fixed costs out over multiple locations. So if you've got your POS, your point of sale system, just one, you have software that you would have to just allocate to
Oh
one,
yeah, yeah,
not to
yeah.
4 or 5. So.
Okay, that totally makes sense. And then the other thing I was wondering is just the real estate. Do you guys lease, or do you buy the buildings?
We lease. That was just a decision we made a long time ago, not to have to, find the property and build it and maintain it. It's just
Mhm.
let somebody else maintain it. We're just going to pay you your lease rate and keep
Right.
going.
Yeah.
It's cheaper that way.
Oh,
Now, at the end of the day, you don't have as big an asset to sell. So
okay.
that's something to consider. But, for us, I just don't think we had the expertise to be um, an owner of the property,
Right. Kind
just
of
a,
picking your
just a
battles.
renter.
Because then
Hmm.
then you're a real estate investor at the same time.
Hmm. Hmm.
So you built an accounting firm, you're building a restaurant group. Which one's harder?
Um, yeah, that's a great question. I think it really depends on, where you are and what you're doing. I think the service side of things, the accounting business, was not as hard
Mhm.
until we got bigger. More
Right.
employees make for more headache. More clients make for more
Right.
headache.
Right.
It's not that it's a bad thing because you can earn some good money, but you have to manage those things well. With the restaurant, I don't have a great perspective on that because I'm not in the restaurant as
You got a
much.
good gig, it sounds like. It sounds like yours is
Yeah,
the best version of doing the restaurant thing.
it is. I say that, they make the money, I help them keep it. And
Yeah,
I do feel like my place is very valuable
sure.
because, like I said, restaurateurs, they don't really know how to keep their money. They don't have a
Mhm.
good, that's why most of them go under. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I want to go back now that we've talked about the accounting firm a little bit. I want to go back to the early days of that because it was just you,
Hmm.
as I understand it, because you were
It
with this
was.
restaurant group, and just
Hmm.
for my knowledge, you were with this restaurant group that grew pretty significantly, right?
Hmm.
They grew a ton, and then you moved into the bottom line. So, what were your goals with that when you first started?
And actually, the bottom line was my role in those restaurant groups. I was still a contractor.
Oh, okay,
So
okay,
I had my bottom line uh, company, sole proprietorship
yeah.
from, way before I actually connected with the restaurant group.
Mhm.
So when I went to the restaurants group, I was still just a contractor with them. I just came in, and did their stuff.
Okay.
Okay. And so then my company grew because theirs grew. And I
Okay.
would have somebody help me from time to time, just a part-time employee. But yeah, it was mostly on me. Um,
Okay.
so that kind of went through, I guess, for 10 plus years before Jessica and I, because she was helping me at the time, decided to go online so we could grow the business more.
Okay.
Okay.
So when you made that decision to go online, did you have any goals of what it would turn into? Because it turned into a fantastic business,
Mm.
but in the early days when you and Jessica were working together on it, did you just say like, we want to make like 100,000 a year or something? Like, did you have any goals going into it? Did you think it would turn into what it turned into?
And we had some goals. It's funny because, Jessica and I were working on this, and her goals were so much higher than my goals. So
Hmm.
she was a good one to actually, push us into, probably more than I would have,
Hmm.
being more conservative.
Yeah.
So my goals were a lot less than hers, but basically my goal was to grow the business so that both of us could be paid what we were worth.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't really have any dollar figure that I was hard and fast on, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, I was thinking about my own, because for the next podcast we're going to do, there was a question that Jess put together for it that was like, what does this mean to you personally? And so I went into this whole like thought experiment of like, why did I even do any of this stuff? Because I was like, sometimes I look, because I've been in business for 10 years, and sometimes I look back and I'm like, I don't even know how I got here in some
Yeah.
ways. My main goal was just, I didn't like working for other people. And so I started a
Mhm.
blog because my number one goal was like, I want to be free. I want to work for myself,
Mhm.
which then I found out like it's actually much more difficult to work for yourself than work for somebody else. But I still, I've always enjoyed it, and it's just kind of taken its own journey from there. But it's surprising to me that it's progressed in the way that it has,
Mhm.
um, to the point where we're doing things like the TBL acquisition or growing Stellar Brands. Um, but it was a very difficult journey. And so I think I'm wondering if it was kind of the same for you in those maybe, first 5 years or
Mhm.
so of TBL. Was it difficult or was it fun?
It was very difficult. I mean, there were fun things about it and watching it grow, but once we went virtual, we were trying to grow it. We were have to make investments. So I
Mm-hmm.
think there was like 4 or 5 years that I just didn't get paid anything,
Yeah.
not very much anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a frustration. Like, is this thing ever going to turn around? Are we ever going to get anywhere? And it's just
Mm-hmm.
the persistence of just keep going until it turned around. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that was really a struggle for me
Yeah.
as we went virtual.
I've had those moments in my business, and those are the
Mm-hmm.
least fun times when you're
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm doing all the stuff. I've got all these people working for me. Everybody else is getting paid but me.
Mm-hmm.
That is definitely not fun. But I always just have had this kind of like, I'm curious if it's the same for you. I've always had this like, well, if I just keep going, it'll probably work out,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of has over the years. And so I'm
Mm-hmm.
just kind of with you being, I'm not a math person, which is why I became a client of TBL in the first
Mm-hmm.
place, because I was just
Mm-hmm.
like, I kind of know how to do this, but not really. But as a math person, is it harder to stay the course on something like that when you are going through those hard times and you know exactly why things are the way they are and what you can do to fix it? But it's like, if you do it, then you might sacrifice future gains. Like, was that difficult for you?
Very much so. And
Yeah.
if I had to do it by myself again, I might not have pushed as far as I did.
Okay.
So I do think that's one of the things that, entrepreneurs should do is kind of yoke themselves up with another person to encourage them when it's hard, to push
Mm-hmm.
them when they need to be pushed, and to balance, your life and work.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I have looked back on the growth of TBL, and at times I think, life was a lot simpler when it was just me.
I, I have the same I have the same thing. I used to just work in coffee shops. And when I
Hmm.
first started my blog, and this was back when blogging was like pretty big. So it was a little bit easier to make money, but I was just in coffee shops all day. And I was
Hmm.
just writing and sending some emails and just, doing easy stuff. And then, then I was like, well, I want to start growing this and I want to hire people and all that. And that started a completely different,
Oh yeah.
it got so much harder.
Hmm.
Um, and it's worked out, but it was extremely difficult. So at what point, because I'm curious about the full-time employee thing, because I started hiring full-time employees almost 4 years ago, and
Hmm.
that has, I think, added the highest level of complexity to the business.
Hmm.
How did you want to hire full-time employees, one, and how did you navigate that as it grew?
Um, First, that's probably the one reason I didn't grow my company before I did, is
Yeah.
I didn't want to have employees. I didn't want to manage them. I know me,
Right.
and I don't like to micromanage.
Uh-huh.
Um, so that was really hard for me. But of course, when you grow, you have to hire people.
Yes.
So we went through the process of hiring people, and I bet we went through 2 rounds of employees before any of them stuck.
Right.
Um, so as much as you try to hire the right people with the right skills, it's a hard thing to figure out.
Yeah.
And one of the lessons that I've learned along the way, which is difficult for me, is to you hire quickly, but you fire even quicker. You hire slow and you fire quick,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because I'm one that's a very loyal person, and once I hire somebody, I don't want to fire them.
Right.
I don't want to retrain somebody first and foremost. I mean, that takes time, energy, and money.
Right.
But also, just I like to see the best in people. So it's hard to
Yes.
hire employees when you have that mindset.
I am wired the same way. And I think that's been the biggest thing that I've messed up in the early days
Hmm.
of hiring, even contractors, because I tried to like
Hmm.
scale with a contractor team with one of my
Hmm.
businesses. And that was a disaster. Like that did not work very well at all. But when I first started hiring people, I just kept having this belief that like, if I just keep coaching them, then eventually
Yeah.
they're going to figure this out. And like, it doesn't work like that at all. I've
No.
found, and we've gotten better at hiring, fortunately, but that's only because I've figured out that like you can't change people, I guess is the
Hmm.
best way. Um, because I've had those times where like I've had employees where it was just like, I seemed to want them to do well better than they wanted to do well. And
Absolutely.
I was like, I really, they're not putting in much effort, but I wonder if it's just because the role isn't good enough for them or something. Like I
Hmm.
kept trying to play all these games. But I found out that doesn't work. So I think your point is very smart that you do have to
Yeah,
just let
well,
people
I
go
learned it
quickly.
the hard way, right? Just like you've had to learn it.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, one of the other key aspects into getting good employees that will do their job and stay, I think, is really clarifying what their role is, what their
Yes.
outcome is expected to be, especially if you're not a micromanager. I don't think micromanaging is a good thing.
No.
I think you should trust your employees to do their job, but you have to find a way to let them know what their job is and then to monitor how they're doing.
Yes. Yeah. That I found the same lesson. I probably should have
Mm-hmm.
talked to you many years ago before I started doing all this
maybe
stuff.
we should have met more than 8 months
I
ago.
know, I know. I've learned a lot from you just in the last 8 months, but it's funny how similar it is, and I think it's probably similar for a lot of entrepreneurs that
Yeah,
start hiring people. I'm sure that it's the same lessons. I've just always wondered, like, is there a way that I could have figured this out without all of the deep frustration and pain sometimes? like, um, but I'm sure you probably feel the same way. Like, I wouldn't be where I am now with my skills if
yeah,
I hadn't gone through all of the messes in the past.
that's
Um,
right.
but now you are at a point where you are, can I call you semi-retired?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
Hmm.
What's that like?
I don't know yet. It hasn't been long enough for it to sink in. But I really do think it's going to be very freeing for me to do some things that I've just put off because I didn't have time.
Mm-hmm.
I want to learn to quilt, right? I know
Okay.
that sounds weird, but I want to learn to
Nah,
quilt.
I don't think so.
Um, just bought a kayak. I'd like to do a little kayaking,
Yeah.
gardening. I love gardening, but I've never really had time to do it. So some of those things I've just put off.
Okay. Do you have any, I've talked to my dad about this. My dad will not retire because he has this belief that if you retire, then you kind of like lose your purpose. And
Mhm.
um, have you had any fears around that as you've gotten closer to actual
Yeah,
retirement?
yeah,
How have you dealt
sure.
with that?
When you're used to working full time plus, um,
Hmm.
the concept of what am I going to do with myself? Um, I had this mission of the bottom line, and it is a mission. It's not just a job.
Yeah.
That's probably the thing that got me through the hard times is just kind of focusing on why you're doing what you're doing. Um, but I think I've come back around to, I'm still doing that. I'm just not
Hmm.
necessarily getting paid for it. I'll
Right.
always be the consummate coach. If someone has questions for me, I love explaining um, accounting and money and how it works. I love explaining that to people. Um, and then I'll just, start finding ways to use those skills in other ways. Um,
Okay. So are you going
you
to
know,
keep, I mean, obviously you're still going with the restaurant group, but are
hmm
you going to find yourself working again in a way?
No,
Okay.
no, not really. It'll be on my time and my schedule. And what I mean by that is, I do have people all the time, even in my family, say, "Hey, I've had plenty call me up. I'm starting this business. Can you, help me decide what I need to do to open it? What do I need to do to close it? What do I need to do to set up things for success?" So
Yeah.
I'll do all of that. I will continue to do all that probably till the day I die or when they stop listening to me.
Do you have plans? Do you have like an end date for the restaurant group stuff, or is that just kind of until you just don't feel like doing it
That's
anymore?
until I'm not really, I don't have this expectation of being fully retired,
Okay.
really, because I've just done so much all my life. Like you said, it's kind of hard to, like your dad said, it's kind of hard to think about not doing anything.
Right.
So I'll do the restaurants until someone else takes them over. We sell them,
Hmm.
whatever, and then figure out the rest from there. I try not to stress about anything too far out in the future.
I mean, I think that's probably smart.
Hmm.
I want to go back to what you said about TBL being a mission, basically
Hmm.
kind of like a mission focused company. But the way that you first described it to me was that TBL was your ministry. And I thought that
Hmm.
was super powerful. I don't
Hmm.
know if I've ever heard somebody say that about their business before. And
Hmm.
so can you just explain what that is?
Hmm. This started a long time ago. When I got out of college, I had my accounting degree, And I was going to get my CPA certification. And I can say this now because I'm semi-retired, but it took me 7 tries to pass my CPA exam.
Wow.
And I was at the point in time where I was like, I mean, I'm a faithful person. So I was like, you know, God, if this is what I'm supposed to be, if this
Mm-hmm.
is what I'm supposed to do, and mine is a sharing of my skills, right? I think we're all called to raise the boats
Mm-hmm.
together by using our skills to do that for each other. And then, you know, the next time I took the CPA exam, I passed one part and then I passed another part. So
Yeah.
ultimately I did pass the CPA exam, and it was just kind of ingrained in me that this is my ministry. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing, is
Mm-hmm.
really to help others understand their accounting and finance better. Because I do think we've lost that skill in our culture
Yeah.
um, quite dramatically. So another reason why we went virtual, Jess and I, is to take that ministry and try to share it even a bigger platform.
Okay. So what did that look like in the business? If it was kind of this like faith-based mission and this is
Mm-hmm.
our ministry, how did that translate to working with the clients?
One, and I've always said this, that my role as somebody's accountant is probably 30% counselor.
Yeah.
You have to listen to them. You've got to understand where they're coming from, what their struggles are, and what their desires are. And sometimes that gets pretty heavy. But
Yeah.
if you can help them tackle some of it from the financial side, it eases their world.
Right.
If it's an entrepreneur, if they can get kind of right with their business and their business working for them, not the opposite,
Mm-hmm.
um, that helps them not only serve their family, but serve their clients.
Yeah.
So I think that ministry focus is key. It also helps you work with people from a customer service perspective
Yeah.
better. You know, you get to them timely, you get to them fully, you know. So I really think all of us everywhere should see whatever we're doing as an opportunity to serve others. And that is a ministry.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I actually didn't know that about the bottom line when I
Mm-hmm.
first became a client, but it was pretty obvious with just the experience dealing with everybody,
Mm-hmm.
whether it was Jess or whether it was Sue or even Ashley or anybody that I dealt with. It was just, I think everybody that I know that has been a TBL client felt like it was a special experience versus being transactional, which was
Right.
every experience I had with an accountant before that. Because I had
Right.
accountants, but it was like, I talked to them around tax time. That was
Mm-hmm.
kind of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought TBL was different. I think that's one of the things that makes the company so great. But kind of along that line of, I think that TBL, from what I understand, was kind of on the pioneer side of moving things online and
Mm-hmm.
moving to more of value-based billing instead of just like one annual
Yeah.
charge. Um,
Mm-hmm.
how have you seen the accounting world change since you first came in?
I've seen it shift toward just that. When we were on kind of the cusp of that, people kind of were looking at us like we were a little crazy. That this
Yeah.
isn't, especially other accountants, right?
Mm-hmm.
And until recently, I think within the last 5 or 10 years, most of the accounting firms out there were run and operated by older
Mm-hmm.
accountants, and they're kind of stuck in their ways, so to say, trained by the establishment before then. But since we've gone online and met a lot of accountants, I think that has shifted. There's a lot
Okay.
of younger CPAs, younger accountants that actually understand and appreciate the concept of value-based billing, of treating your clients, better than the ones before you.
Right.
Um, so it has shifted dramatically.
Okay. Was this is I'm curious about this because after I started my business, I had to start a marketing firm, like just small local marketing firm to make
Mm-hmm.
money because blogs don't make money very quickly.
Right.
Um, and it was a jeweler, and I remember they showed me how they did their accounting one time, and it was literally all paper. And this was like 2015, and it was just everything
Wow.
was just completely written down.
Mm-hmm.
When there was a point in time I know where like AI was kind of first introduced into accounting, and I think there was probably a big scare of like, is this going to eliminate accountants back
Mm-hmm.
then? Did you see was it just literally a shift from like paper and manual entries to just kind of making it a little bit easier?
Well, for me, I've been through the gamut. I started out on paper,
Okay.
before computers were really a thing.
Yeah.
We had big ledger sheets and then we went to computers and that saved a ton of input time,
Right.
um, clerical time, ton of it, huge. Now, when AI came in, it allowed certain, softwares to help you. It
Hmm.
remembered what you did last time. It was smarter. And yes, a lot of people thought it might, hurt their business, but if you're doing it right, it's not going to hurt you. It'll just make it easier. Your
Right.
job then shifts from transactional to advisory,
Right.
to make, because a lot of people, even if it's in front of them, they can't understand it. I always tout the balance sheet. Nobody knows what a balance sheet says. You hardly know
Right.
what it is, but to me, it's the most important um, document you could look at, the most
Right.
important report that you could look at. So it's that type of thing, explaining to people what these numbers that this software is spitting out at you actually means,
Right.
where the
Right.
holes are, nope, that can't be right. That doesn't look right. Digging into the details when things don't look good. So,
Yeah.
no, I'm not worried about AI actually taking jobs away from accountants if they're doing their job right.
Okay. So what would you imagine? Because that is the fear for everybody right now. It's honestly
Mm-hmm.
not something I'm very worried about either, because I use
Mm-hmm.
AI every day and I'm like, I don't know, even if it gets exponentially better, I don't see how this replaces an advisor or an accountant, because there's so much, it's like you said, and I know this from just being a client. Most of my questions were not about the actual numbers, but it was more about like, how do I do this to where I can take care of my family and meet these goals that I have, and then also keep the business running. Like it wasn't very transactionally based. The questions that I had for everybody at TBL, it was more just like, I have these goals, like how do we do all this stuff to get there? So do you think that it's just going to continue that way, or do you think something else is going to happen?
No, I think it'll continue that way. Unless something comes, I actually fathom.
Right. Yeah. Who
Things will
knows?
continue that way. The transaction part of it will be less of a problem. I think it'll get even easier. AI will maybe
Yeah.
take out the software in between, so to
Hmm.
say, and you'll get things straight from your bank account, or whatever. But
Right.
I think a good, in any field, not just accounting, the most successful ones will be the ones that really dive into the advisory portion of it, that dive into the relational portion of it with their clients. Because we've seen time and time again in our business when clients are going through a hard time and we don't have the funds to keep you anymore, and you're like, well, you can't afford not to keep me, so let's work something out.
Right.
you know that sort of thing. That relationship is key to keeping your clients. You can't
Yeah.
always save all of them, but it is a big one.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's the experience that I've had with TBL. Cause like we've
Mm-hmm.
had great times where I'm like, what do we do with all this money? This is
Mm-hmm.
awesome. And then we've had other
Mm-hmm.
times where I'm like, I don't know how we're going to make this work at all. This is going
Mm-hmm.
to be crazy.
Right.
Um, well, I know we have another recording coming up not too long from now. So I'll go ahead and end this one here. I think for everybody that's listening, we're going to release another podcast that talks about the actual acquisition in depth. So that might be kind of a follow-up episode of this one. But Marilyn, I appreciate your time. It's been, obviously wonderful getting to know you and everything. I think your story is awesome. And I am extremely jealous about your semi-retirement, full whatever retirement that you have. And I kind of look forward to that day for myself someday.
Yeah, you're a lot younger than me, so you have plenty of
I know
time
I
to
got
get
time.
there.
I got time. But thank you so much for joining. I appreciate it. And I'll talk to you in about 20 minutes.
Thanks, Bobby.
All right.